Ways on how to avoid the early withdrawal penalty on your IRA. That's what we're going to talk about here today at the Heritage Wealth Planning YouTube channel. We're going to look at a relatively recent article from Emily Brandon. I'm actually like what she writes from U.S. News and World Report. Then we're going to jump into the IRS.gov website itself explicitly and just talk about that as well. It's pretty important because if you need cash and you're thinking, I got a big amount in an IRA, but I need the cash. And you're like, well, I don't want to take a 10% withdrawal penalty, so I'm going to put on a credit card. That's the wrong answer. So we're going to show you the ways you can avoid the 10% early withdrawal penalty. Always remember, you're not going to avoid taxation. You'll never avoid taxation from an IRA other than giving the money to charity. So this is so this will at least help you avoid the 10% penalty. So don't forget to subscribe. As always, comments, thumbs up, everything helps me a lot with YouTube. So feel free to share the video and, of course, comments and thumbs up and subscribe. So we'll go right into this right here, my friends. And we're going to read this verbatim from, well, not verbatim. I'll give it my spicy commentary, if you will, from Emily Brandon's article from a U.S. News and World Report dated November 7th, 2018. 11 ways to avoid the IRA early withdrawal penalty. You don't have to pay the 10% penalty if you use money for these specific purposes. So let's dive right into this. Distributions from your IRAs before 59.5 typically trigger a 10% early withdrawal penalty. However, the IRA rules contain several exceptions to the penalty if you meet them. Here are the 11 ways to avoid it. And the first one, of course, is wait until you're 59.5. That's way number one. You can have access unencumbered to your IRA once you're over the age of 59.5. It will still be taxed. Remember, we're just talking about the 10% penalty. An IRA withdrawal for medical expenses. IRA distributions used to pay for medical expenses that are not reimbursed by health insurance and exceed 10% of your AGI. So remember, that's AGI, not taxable income. So if you have $100,000 and you have a $10,000 medical expense that is not reimbursed by health insurance, that does not exceed 10% of your AGI. If you had $11,000 and you had $1,000 of that would exceed 10% of your AGI. So that $1,000 and $1,000 only would be exempt from the 10% early withdrawal penalty. The other $10,000 would not. So it's not so good because essentially you're going to pay a 10% penalty on that $10,000. And you're going to pay no penalty on the extra $1,000, but you're still going to pay tax on the entirety of the withdrawal. So that's not good. 10% of your AGI, my friends. That's a big deal. All right. An IRA withdrawal to pay for health insurance. So remember, the first one is for medical expenses. This is to pay for health insurance. If you lose your job and collect unemployment for 12 consecutive weeks, you can take penalty-free distributions if you use the money to pay for health insurance for you or your spouse or dependents. To qualify for this exception, you must take the distribution in the year you received unemployment compensation or the following year before you have been reemployed for 60 days or more. So this right here, if you're not on unemployment, you don't get the 10% penalty free. You just don't. You have to be on unemployment compensation, and it has to be in the year in which you received it to take the distribution free of the 10% penalty, or the following year and before you have been reemployed for 60 days or more. So good luck trying to organize that for sure. And so I tell you, all these exceptions all sound like, hey, there's exceptions for health insurance, there's exceptions for medical expenditures. They're not nearly as good as what you think. An IRA withdrawal for college cost. Penalty-free IRA distributions are allowed to pay for college, which includes tuition, fees, books, supplies, and equipment. Room and board also count if the individual attending college is at least a half-time student. Qualifying institutions include colleges, universities, and vocational schools, which are eligible to participate in the federal student aid program. However, IRA distributions are considered taxable income and could reduce your eligibility for financial aid. So, robbing Peter to pay Paul. That's what we're doing here. I did find it funny. Qualifying institutions include programs that are eligible to participate in the federal student aid program. So like a school like Hillsdale University which doesn't have anything to do with federal student aid because they don't want the federal government telling them how they educate kids. You would not be able to get a penalty-free IRA withdrawal if you go to Hillsdale, which is kind of funny. And that's more of the government dictating societal norms, which is actually kind of frightening. But going in, if you don't like it, then don't play by their rules. But just remember, you're also going to have to pay other ways around that for sure. And in this case, again, if you go to Hillsdale College in Michigan, you do not get an IRA tax exemption because you're not you're not attending a qualifying school that's eligible to participate in the federal student aid program. An IRA withdrawal for a first home purchase. You can withdraw up to $10,000 or $20,000 from an IRA to buy or build a first home without incurring the penalty. To qualify for the exemption, you must not have owned a home for the 2 years preceding this purchase. If the purchase or construction of your home is canceled or delayed, put the money back in your IRA with 120 days of the distribution to avoid the penalty. So I sit here today, I want to buy the house across the street. I own this house right now. Actually, the bank owns it, but you know what I'm saying? It's not going to work because I've owned a house within the previous 2 years. If I was renting previously, though, for the last 2 years, and I want to put $20,000 down on that house across the street, I could get it out tax-free or penalty-free. Of course, still have to pay income tax. You're not getting around paying income tax in your IRA, my friend. Just not happening. And $20,000, that's not bad. I mean, that could be a nice little down payment for sure. Just be careful because remember, if your thing falls through, like they say, you have 120 days to put the money back in to avoid the penalty. An IRA withdrawal to pay for a disability. I hear this one a lot. People with severe physical and mental disabilities who are no longer able to work can take IRA withdrawals without penalty if they can get a physician to sign off on the severity of the condition. All right, so you get a physician to sign, you can take a withdrawal without penalty. Who would you get? I just talked to your primary care physician. Will that person sign it? I don't know, but presumably they would, and you can take it without penalty. Theoretically, could the IRS talk to that physician and make sure that you're not, playing football at night? You're claiming that you're up against the wall during the day. I guess, but there you go. If you want to avoid a penalty, get your physician to say you're physically and mentally impaired, and you can have an IRA withdrawal for the disability without the penalty. Withdrawal from military service. Members of the military reserves who take an IRA distribution during a period of active duty of more than 179 days do not have to pay for a 10% penalty on the amount withdrawn. So that's pretty interesting, actually. If you're called up and let's just say you're being deployed for 6 months, that might not be a bad time to take money out of your IRA to get it out of there once and for all. Again, you're going to have to pay tax on it. Yes, indeed. But you won't have to pay a penalty on it. So you might want to use these opportunity, my friends, if you're a reserve or a National Guardsman, to say, I might want that house down the street in a couple of years, but I'm going to need more than $20,000 for down payment. I'm not making much money today, so I could pull the money from my IRA, dump it into a savings account or a mutual, whatever you want to do, and not pay a 10% penalty as long as I've been called up for more than 179 days. There's some opportunity there, I'm telling you. Set up annuity. This is a good one right here. I think people look over a lot. IRS withdrawals taken as a series of annuity payments are not subject to the early withdrawal penalty. The use of an IRS-approved distribution method and at least one withdrawal annually are required. The payments are calculated based on your life expectancy or the joint life expectancies of you and your beneficiary and generally require professional assistance to calculate. If you don't consistently withdraw the correct amount over the appropriate number of years, penalties could be applied. So this is a 72T rule, that separate, equally periodic payments, the SEPP. I cannot tell you how many people say, I'm just going to do a 72T. Man, you better do it right. I cannot tell you how many times I've come into this where people being solicited to do the 72T. Like, I can just do this and then pull their money out of the IRA, and they think they don't have to do it up until they're age 59 and a half. They're only 45 years old today. You got to do it for 15 years, man. No other way around that. It has to be the same amount each and every year for 15 years. No getting around that. Anyway, there's a lot going on in those 72T things. I'm not a fan of it. Let's just put it that way. I've seen it. I've heard of it. I've heard a lot of brokers talk about it because that's a good way for them to get you to invest with them essentially. But I'm not a big fan of it at all. I'm sure it works on occasion, but the vast majority of times, I don't want to say it. I would say shy away from that if you can avoid it for sure. A Roth IRA withdrawal. We talked about this. A Roth IRA often has fewer restrictions. You may be able to withdraw your contributions, but not the earnings from a Roth IRA that is at least 5 years old without incurring the penalty. That's simply not true. You can always withdraw your contributions, so I'm not sure why she says that here. I'm going to do another video here. In fact, you can see it up here. The Motley Fool is a wonderful article on Roth IRA early withdrawals. I'll do another one here in just a second. That's simply not correct. You can withdraw your contributions anytime you want. I'm surprised Emily, I'm familiar with Emily's writing, so I'm surprised she had written that. Inherited IRA. This is a big one right here. If you inherit an IRA before the age of 59 and a half, you can take penalty-free withdrawals, but will need to pay income tax. However, if you inherit an IRA from your spouse and elect to treat it as your own, your distributions before 59 and a half will be subject to the early withdrawal penalty. Man, this is critically, I probably need to do a separate video on this alone. In fact, I will. If you are married and you're under the age of 59 and a half and your spouse dies and you inherit that IRA and you roll it to your own IRA and you later decide to take income from it, but you're still under the age of 59 and a half, that's completely a penalty for a premature distribution because you're before the age of 59 and a half. However, if you kept that IRA on its own as an inherited IRA, it's got to pay tax, but it's completely free of the premature distribution penalty of the 59 and a half. Critically important for spouses to know this before they hit 59 and a half. Leave the money in a 401k. Workers who leave their jobs in the year they turn 55 or older can withdraw money from their 401k without having to pay the 10% penalty. But if that money is rolled to an IRA, you will have to wait until you're age 59 and a half to avoid the penalty. So two things going on here. If you have an 401k and you separate from service when you're 55 or older, do not roll that into an IRA. There's really no reason to do that whatsoever. So what we'll hear is, you can take it, roll it over to this IRA from your provider, your employer-sponsored plan, and we'll do a 72T. No, don't do that. Leave it in your 401k and take it out as you see fit. It's that simple. Do not roll it from your previous employer after you separate from service if you're 55 or older, and then roll it to an IRA in which to take a 72T in order to avoid early withdrawal penalties. It doesn't make sense that people do this all the time. So that's another thing. They'll leave it in your 401k after you separate from service if you're 55 or above. But there's more to this now. Let's go to the IRS.gov, and here's the exceptions to tax on early distributions, and we're going to talk about these. We already talked about it after 59 and a half. Permissive withdrawals from a plan with auto enrollment features. So from simple exceptions, qualified plans, 401ks, IRA simples, yes. I don't even know what a 414 W1, I have no idea what that is. So permissive withdrawals from a plan with automatic, I don't even know what that means. So there's something right there. If you have permissive withdrawals from a plan with auto enrollment features, I don't know what that means. Maybe they say, hey, you were automatically enrolled and you didn't want to get automatically enrolled, so you want to pull the money out because they automatically enrolled you. I bet that's what that is, actually. Some forms, we got some academics out there saying you will actually increase 401k contributions or if you automatically enroll them in the plan as opposed to getting affirmative action. They actually say it's going to happen automatically. They don't need to take affirmative action in which to enroll the plan. So if you're permissive withdrawals from a plan with automatic enrollment, and they say, I didn't want to do that, and you pull your money out, it looks like they're saying, the IRS saying, you can escape a 10% early withdrawal penalty. Corrective distributions, they put too much money in there, excess contributions right here. Excess deferrals made timely. What does that mean for the IRS? Who knows? But just you got to get your money out, do it in a timely manner, and it will be free of the 10% early withdrawal penalty. Death, we talk about death of the IRA owner. Disability, we talked about that. Emily says you need to get a surgeon to sign off on that. Domestic relations, to pay a qualified domestic relations order, which is called a quadro. So you and your spouse are separating and you're giving half your IRA to your spouse. that money that she will inherit from you essentially through the quadro will not be subject to the 10% early withdrawal penalty. Education, we already talked about qualified higher education, equal payments, series of substantially equal payments, 72T, we talked about that. Dividends passed through an employee stock ownership plan, ESOP. I don't get that. I don't think I've ever got that maybe. So I'm sure that happens. Talked about qualifying for first-time homeowners. We did not talk about the levy. So if the IRS has a levy on your plan and you take it out to satisfy them, they're not going to charge a 10% penalty, which is good. Amount of unreimbursed medical expenses, 10% of AGI. You have, so it's got to be more than 10%, and you'll have access to it without the penalty. But still, remember, as I talked about in that example before, $100,000 of AGI, the first $10,000 you take is still going to be subject to 10% early withdrawal penalty. Health insurance premiums paid while unemployed. We talked about that. It's not nearly as wonderful as we talked about. Military, certain distributions to qualified military. Again, once you're called up for over 179 days, you can take money out of your IRA. No limits, at least I could see. And because of that, that might be an opportunity for you. Returned IRA contributions. Now, remember, you do have, if you take an IRA distribution out, you can put it back in within 60 days to avoid that early penalty. Just keep that in mind. Some people think it's a loan. It's not a loan. I guess you could call it whatever. It's semantics. But if you take it out and you put it back in within 60 days, it's not going to be subject to that IRA early withdrawal penalty as the earnings. But not the earnings. That's interesting. Earnings on these return contributions will still be subject, which is pretty interesting. Yeah, right there. Right there for IRAs and 401ks. That's only on IRAs, by the way. That's not on 401ks. So you can't do either. For IRAs and simple IRAs and SEP IRAs, you can take withdrawal of your contributions, but you can put it back in within 60 days. But earnings on those return contributions are not free of the 10% penalty. Rollovers, we talked about that, just in-plan Roth rollovers or eligible distributions contribute to another retirement plan or an IRA. That's kind of what that's called. Separation from service. We talked about that, but that's where it gets a little bit more interesting. The employee separates from, remember, this is the IRS website, my friends, irs.gov. The employee separates from service during or after the year which the employee reaches age 55. Notice, though, age 50 for public safety employees of a state political subdivision of a state in a government-defined benefit plan. Hold on, we're going to go down into that. That is for 401ks, TSBs, 403bs, and I think 457s as well. Yep, 457s. So what we'll talk about here, governmental 457 distributions are not subject to the 10% additional tax except for distributions attributed to rollovers from another type or plan or IRA. All right, simple IRA distributions occur a 25% additional tax instead of 10% if made within the first 2 years of participation. I don't see a whole lot of reasons to do simple IRAs anymore. If you are one of the fewer people that are doing it, just remember, if you take money out before 2 years are up, you're not paying 10%, you're paying 25% of an early distribution for sure, distribution taxation for sure. So qualified public safety employees. So remember, separation from service for age 50 for public safety employees. What is a qualified public safety employee? Effective for distributions after 2015. The exception for public safety employees who are 50 or over is expanded to include specified law enforcement officers, customs and border protection officers, federal firefighters, and air traffic controllers. Also, the restriction that only defined benefit plans qualify for the exemption is eliminated. Thus, an exemption is allowed for the distribution from defined contribution plans or other types of governmental plans such as the TSP. So keep that in mind. Emily didn't talk about that, and I wish she would have, but if you are a qualified public safety employee and you're part of a state, political subdivision of a state, in a government-defined benefit or defined contribution plan, i.e. you're a police officer or firefighter with your county or even town, you, as long as you separate from service at 50 or beyond, can take money from those accounts without paying the early penalty. That is a fact, my friends. I've done other videos on that. It's critically important to understand. If you roll it to an IRA, same thing as separating from service in a regular 401k plan. You can't do that if it's rolled over to an IRA. You've got to keep it there. All right. So I hope this helps. We are going to go into the next point about Roth IRA early withdrawals. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of that. And I'll share that with you, why you need to know. Because again, if you're thinking about, you need some scratch, you're like, where do I get it from? And like, you're thinking about taking on debt. And let's just say you're you're a firefighter here in Fulton County, Georgia. You're like, I'm 51 years old. I just quit being my job as a federal firefighter. I still got my TSP or my government plan through the county or whatever it is. You can say, I need my money to do whatever, but I don't want to take a 10% penalty, so I'm going to go put it on a credit card. Don't do that. You can take it from your TSP or whatever your government-defined plan is without paying early premature penalties on that account. So just keep that in mind for sure. So hope this helps. As always, thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, share the video with people you know should follow this. And then I'll see you guys next time when we talk about Roth IRA early distributions. Thanks, guys.